Hello there, dear viewers, and welcome to our special coverage for tonight. Tonight's episode unfolds against the backdrop of unprecedented escalation between the Zionist entity and the Islamic Republic of Iran. We analyze the gravity of this moment, from missile exchanges and drone warfare to diplomatic chaos and global reactions. 90 minutes of critical analysis, break-in developments, and expert insights right here. But before we begin, let's watch this report by Yasin Rikti and then we come back.
The conflict between Iran and Israel occupation has sharply escalated, with both nations exchanging deadly missile and drone strikes, leaving hundreds dead and injured, and prompting fears of a wider regional war. Iran launched two major waves of ballistic missiles and drones, including a direct hit on the Israeli port city of Haifa, where 15 people were injured, and the nearby town of Tamra, where 4 women were killed. The entity responded with a barrage of strikes targeting Tehran, a foreign ministry building, a military base in Isfahan, and a refueling aircraft at Mashhad airport. In occupied Palestine, rescue workers are combing through the rubble, especially in the town of Bat Yam, one of the hardest hit areas during the Iranian attack. Buildings across the city sustained heavy damage, while on the Iranian side, local sources from the Iranian Health Ministry reported 224 deaths and 1,481 injuries since the entity's attacks began. And according to Zionist media, at least 13 people have been killed and 380 injured since Thursday due to Iran's retaliation attacks. Amid the fighting, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reaffirmed the country's commitment to enriching uranium beyond 60%, calling it a sovereign right. He said Iran will reject any deal that infringes on its nuclear program.
We are ready for any agreement aimed at preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. This is our doctrine. We believe that nuclear weapons are forbidden and prohibited. However, if the goal of any agreement is to deprive Iran of its legitimate nuclear rights, then naturally, we are not prepared to accept such an agreement.
US President Donald Trump warned Iran of unprecedented retaliation if it attacked the US, though he denied any US role in the strikes on Iran. He also claimed that a peace deal between Iran and Israel is still possible. Meanwhile, Iran threatened to escalate its response against the Israel occupation for its continuous attacks on its facilities, while calling Israeli citizens to flee the sensitive areas. In Europe, Germany and Oman are pushing for diplomacy. Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Sultan Tariq bin Haytham urged de-escalation, while the G7 summit in Canada is expected to focus heavily on the crisis. While Germany, France and the UK expressed readiness to reopen nuclear negotiations, but only if Iran commits to not developing nuclear weapons. From its part, the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed that no significant damage occurred at Iran's main nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz and Kandab. Despite the Israeli strikes, Iran acknowledged only limited damage at Fordo. For global markets, the violence is sending shockwaves. Analysts warn that oil prices could surge past $130 to $150 a barrel. As casualties mount and military operations intensify, international calls for restraint grow louder. But for now, both sides remain locked in confrontation.
And before we bring in our guest for tonight, let me share with you the latest updates. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced the launch of a coordinated combined attacks targeted the occupied Palestinian territories. In a statement on Sunday, the IRGC confirmed firing around 80 ballistic missiles at Israeli targets, claiming direct hits on 6 locations in occupied Jaffa and Haifa. And an unprecedented daytime strike, missiles also hit a power station in Hadura and the town of Qaysiriya, according to Iran's Tasnim news agency. Additional rockets were fired later on Sunday evening toward Palestinian-occupied areas as well. Similarly, Iran's military has issued a stark warning to Zionist settlers, urging them to leave the occupied lands. as missile exchanges between the two sides entered a third consecutive day. Appearing on state television, Colonel Reza Sayad vowed a devastating response just hours before Iran launched a fresh wave of strikes on the entity's targets Sunday evening.
We currently possess a complete database of all your sensitive and critical locations and vital points. Therefore, we emphasize, do not allow the criminal regime to use you as human shields. Refrain from residing or moving near the mentioned locations. And know that staying in underground shelters will not provide you with security.
The Iranian government announced Sunday that mosques, metro stations, and schools will begin serving as shelters starting from Sunday evening. As the occupation bombardment enters its third consecutive day, government spokesperson Fatime Majawani confirmed on state television that mosques are among the shelters available to the public. Metro stations are prepared and opened tonight, while schools are also considered safe zones.
There is no problem whatsoever in providing food, medicine, and fuel. Iranians can take shelters in mosques and schools during the Israeli attacks, as well as in metro stations, which will remain open at all times starting tonight.
For its part, Iran's health ministry announced that the death toll from the ongoing Zionist assault has risen to a staggering 224, according to official medical sources cited by the Iranian state TV. More than 75 people, mostly women and children, were killed in a renewed strike targeting residential buildings in Tehran. Rescue operations are still underway as crews search for victims beneath the rubble. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Sunday that Tehran possesses evidence implicating the United States in backing the Zionist aggression on the Iranian capital. Speaking at a press conference, Araghchi stated that the attack would not have occurred without U.S. support and a green light, despite a message from Donald Trump administrations denying any involvement. He stressed that Iran expects Washington to condemn the targeting of its nuclear facilities as a sign of good faith.
We have conclusive evidence of how U.S. forces are assisting the Zionist regime. But beyond our own evidence, what is even more telling are the statements and the tweets of U.S. President himself, where he openly expressed his support. He clearly stated that such an operation could not have taken place without American backing, and he explicitly said that further steps will follow. Therefore, from our perspective, the United States is a partner in these attacks and must bear responsibility.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced further that missile strikes on the Zionist entity will cease once its ongoing assault on Iran underway since Friday comes to an end. He stressed that Tehran is acting in self-defense, calling its response legitimate and directed against an aggressor.
We are defending ourselves. Our defense is legitimate and fully permitted. This defense is a response to aggression. And if the aggression stops, it is only natural that our response will stop as well.
All right, let's bring in our guest now. Joining us tonight is Dr. Abdenoor Toumi, geopolitical analyst specialized in MENA regions and Maghreb affairs from Paris, France. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to be with us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the show.
Our pleasure, as always. And with us tonight as well from California, USA, is Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean and Professor of International Studies. Thank you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi.
Thank you, Karim. To me.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. So let me start with you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. Are we witnessing a full-scale war Or is this still considered tit-for-tat retaliation? I mean, what can we deduce from, for example, the Hebrew Channel, number 12, saying Iran has decided to increase its force? Are we here maybe on the brink of a regional explosion?
It's all possible, but it does seem that it is a tat for tat. Who is going to win? Parties looking for ways of get more advantage than other parties. But what's very interesting is when you hear President Donald Trump call it for, there is no discussion. He's not calling for the war or anyone responsible. Rather, he's Iran for that. So it's really, it seems like it's still between the countries. Each country is showing some of its strategic weapons. And I think that we might go only if something in the next few days, for a few days, tic-tac-tac, yeah.
Thank you indeed. Let's bring in Dr. Abdenour Toumi to the conversation. So, Dr. Abdenour Toumi, Iran bombarded Zionist targets in broad daylight for the first time. Is this a significant shift? I mean, what's the strategic message we can get from here?
It is a shift, and it is indeed a part of this. Actually, it's a war. I mean, it's not just an escalation, and but it's a battle of an arm wrestling, and as we know, in this kind of battles, is whoever screams first loses. And Iran is showing its strength now and doesn't want to look, or at least to show some weakness to the colonial states army. And even though, I mean, there are what Iranians military and intelligence service in this stance has, suffered great deal in the first hours of the aggression of the colonial state army. But now, it's 72 hours later, the Iranians are, I would say, are taking the lead, and they are showing, and again, their strength militarily, and sending a very, very strong message. And it is historic, again, element is happening within the colonial state society, because it's the first time since 1948 where we see those again damages, and that the colonial state was hit severely by the Iranians.
We see that maybe it was hit severely, as you said, but then when we look at the toll and the casualty, we see that it is staggering on the Iranian side more than the Zionist or the aggressor side.
And this isn't also, it's a battle of communication. And again, we know, the colonial state army, has this, I would say, a habit to lie about the numbers and so on. But, actually, it is, again, it does have an effect, a psychological effect, but right now it doesn't have too much meaning for the Iranians, because, as I said, it is the first time to see those pictures that showing all these building actually tore down, and the more actually 10 million people are actually again heading to the underground and hiding from the Iranians' missiles. And also, which is very important, I mean, the missiles are also, I mean, hitting their target. And we saw what happened in Haifa, an occupied Haifa, and which is the launch of the colonial state's economy, and adding to that to shut down the airport. And this is, has a great significance.
So you're saying that even if it's not that precise, it can still disturb and causes damage and delay, right? But then what can we deduce when it comes to precise military targets? Do you think the Iranian Republic has the capabilities to strike sensitive areas, maybe to, let's say, hit where it hurts?
Karim, it's a very good question, a pertinent question. I mean, even though I'm not a military expert, but right now, as again, I said, it is important for the Iranians to show their strength, and especially I would say that this next 48 hours are very important in this battle, because the Zionist state army has this capability to hit again hard the Iranians because of their superiority in terms of intelligence and technology. But right now, the Iranians are showing strong resilience, and not only resilience, but also they are having these counterattacks, and that are having a great impact. And again, the key element here is the colonial state society. I mean, these 10 millions who never again, especially never went through this devastation, physical devastation, and to see those images. And because, again, all wars that the colonial state army led were outside what they call it, their state. I mean, we saw the war that there were before with the in 67, in 73, we were with Arab neighbors' armies, and they were actually hitting their quote-unquote enemies on the exterior. But this time it is inside the colonial state society, and it's a shift in this conflict.
Thank you indeed. Let me go back to Dr. Hamoud Salhi now. Dr. Hamoud, Trump threatens on the one hand Iran, and then he wants to talk peace, let's say. What's the strategy behind the contradictory signals here, according to you?
It's very interesting, because Trump seems to try to win both ways. Tries to put some pressure on Iran, while at the same time appear as if he wants some kind of accord. In the two interviews, it has made clear that he's not talking about end or stop war, but the two parties come together and reach an agreement. What's very interesting. He said in one of the this morning, but they had done two presses sort of meet with the day. In the morning, his station, a news station, he basically described what's happening between Iran as two people fighting, and once they fight, they agreement. That's how he described it. So it's they are very concerned with what the Iranians have done. The idea that that we see the first Israel attack, there was euphoria, happiness, and this soon declined. And Trump has to think about the Israeli Netanyahu's strategy at this is to get the United States be part, get involved in it, and or get involved at least some report in helping them get rid of the weapons or so-called facilities. It's because they have proven to be resilient and to be a strong country and calculated, allowing Israel.
All right, Dr. Abdunnoor Toomey, the US could intervene to help the Zionist entity eliminate Iran's nuclear program. Well, could this trigger World War III?
Again, Karim, actually, when we speak about the U.S. position in this war, actually, it's not, actually, it's clear that everybody knows the Americans are not neutral on this. I mean, they take a position and they are showing this unconditional support for the colonial states' strategic objectives in the region. And this is, it's not new. And it's not only on the Iranian nuclear program. And we saw how those policies that have been carried out from the previous administration to this one. And this is why, I mean, it makes or creating this contradiction, and the experts and analysis on foreign policy, and I'm sure Professor Sarhi knows better than me what's going on in the US and how, again, reasonable people or analysts are having a hard time to understand President Donald Trump's second term Middle East doctrine. This is a question of but, and but it's a conjunction. So we don't know. I mean, what, sure, we all know he is unpredictable and so on. But it's now his position is he wants to bring the Iranians to the negotiation table underneath. And in other words, he wants them, or he was actually negotiating with them under the fire. And the same tactic the war criminal prime minister of the colonial state has been following in his quote-unquote negotiation process with the Palestinian resistance over the carnage to end the carnage in Gaza. And this is for the colonial state prime minister, it's his tactic, and it's not new. I mean, he's the one who imploded the Oslo Accords and up to today. And he just, I mean, he is behind this sabotage of the negotiation process and under talks between the Iranians and the US. So this is why today, when we speak about the Americans are going to step up and try, I mean, they can end this war. Sure, they can, because they have diplomatic leverage and so on, but they wouldn't use it because they are biased and they are showing this full support, unconditional support to this messianic, racist government of the Zionist state. So, and this is why another key element here when we speak about the Iranians, because now the Iranians are not going to trust President Donald Trump whatsoever, because I mean they felt betrayed. So that the mediator. I mean, the Oman, Sultan of Oman, who was, who put very and solid effort and serious efforts to have to break through for diplomatic solution and at least something they can talk about between the Americans and the Iranians. But this one is dead.
Indeed. Let me bring here Dr. Hamoud Salhi just to comment in light of what you were saying. Dr. Hamoud Salhi, McGregory said America first doesn't mean Israel first. Could the US walk back its support here? Can we perhaps predict something quite the contrary of the scenario that was drawn by Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi, saying that it has unconditional support to the Zionist entity over Iran, that is?
No, Dr. Toumi is spot on. Igor is mistaken. Israel is first, and America is second when it comes to the Israeli lobby, the Israeli interest. If Israel is not first, America is first, we would not have seen what we have witnessed in Gaza. We would not have seen Democrats losing elections because of Gaza. We would not have seen interest, American isolation to what degree the way it has. America is not, Israel is number one in the America's mind, in its policy. Remember the sanctions that the United States took against the ICC, it was to counter the Israelis. They took actions against the ICC because of that. The Security Council veto that the United States has used have always been to Israel to make. And then let's go back or just examine what in this instance. We found out now that what Donald Trump was doing in terms of having negotiations, meeting a man, the 60 days that he talked about, the meeting that he has with Netanyahu 3 days before, all this were a large degree of rules. I mean, clearly, that the United States has been very involved in this scenario, this war, in the aggression, the attack against Iran. So from that, it's not it was been misleading this at this point. And then the last point, United States today is united, are questioning what you call what's happening in Netanyahu's side, but not the others, or at least the Republicans in power have come there to say they are against Israel. Instead, there is a move that is trying to push the United States to get involved. And one of the scenarios that's being discussed is to help Israel. The Israelis are saying with intelligence, with weapons, in attacking or dismantling nuclear facilities. So the debate is really the same as before. Dr. Toumi's reference to Israel, to America's support for Israel as unconditional, fits here very well.
Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi, so you see here Dr. Hamoud Salhi agrees with you on the fact that the US will always have this support toward the Zionist entity. But then what does this mean to US-Iran diplomacy talks? I mean, especially that Iran now claims to have proof of US involvement. What could that mean for US-Iran diplomacy and those nuclear talks?
Actually, it's on a natural shift right now because there is a key element in discussions between two people. It's based on trust. And the Iranians have lost that trust from the Americans. And this is why it's going very, very hard for the Iranians now to go back to the negotiation table, even though they were actually ready and they showed some sincerity on this matter to negotiate and to look for a peaceful diplomatic solution for this complex issue regarding their nuclear program. But the question now, the imperative of these talks change, especially on the last 3 days. And I think I said this yesterday or the night before. There is a milestone shift now in this conflict. And I mean, the situation of June 13, pre-June, post-June 13 is not the same as it was on June 12. So the Iranians now are going nuclear. And so and also the equation of deterrence has changed. I mean, now, to some extent, I'm sure some military expert or intelligence expert are following that. And they know the Iranian, they are not going to back up or cave in on their nuclear program. And this is why the imperative of this complex issue has changed. Now we are hearing about a report and serious actually statements from the Americans and even some Europeans and European leaders and media and so on about regime change. So,
But,
and this,
yeah, but I want to highlight one point. You said that they are not going to back from the nuclear program now, especially after this attack, which kind of obliges them, let's say, to have this as a deterrence or just to defend themselves. But then 14 Iranian nuclear scientists were assassinated. I'm just wondering what could be the implications for Iran's nuclear ambitions, according to you, Dr. Abdel.
and that's true. I mean, and this is not new. I mean, the Zionist for the colonial state administration have been targeting the knowledge, as we say in French, le savoir, and killing all these scientists. And by the way, the Americans did the same thing when they invaded Iraq in 2003. Actually, they killed tons of Iraqi scientists. So, and because, as I said, Karim, before, this is the mentality of the colonial mentality of the white man, of the colonizer. I mean, he doesn't want to see the Easterner to have the knowledge, to master himself. And this is, I'm sure, Professor Sahi will correct me on that one when it comes to the writings of Dr. Franz Fanon and Professor Edouard Said, who did develop this theory and how the conflictual relation between the Westerners and the Easterners. And this is what we are, where we are now fits perfectly the mentality of the Western leaders, and particularly the war criminal, the prime minister of the Zionist state. And this is, but doesn't mean the Iranians should have lost their matière grise, but they are coming stronger and they are developing their nuclear program and their technology.
Perfect. Let me get back to Dr. Hamoud Salhi now. So, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, I'm perhaps going to redirect a question that I have already asked to Abdel Toumi regarding Iran having the proofs that the US was involved indeed in these strikes and aggression against the Iranian Republic by the Zionist entity. So what could that mean for US diplomacy with Iran?
No, I think the Iranians have been very patient, have been very rational in their thinking. So far, as long as the United States doesn't do, is not directly involved in attacking Iran, the Iranians, maybe that's the implied agreement. They are not. We're not going to attack United States or United States facilities. But what you have to consider in Iran is the fact that they have what we call the strategic depth. They have allies in the region, and this is not sort of allies that are superficial. There are strong allies. Plus, the Israelis, this is the first time, as we know, since 1973, they have actually engaged in a war against another state-organized army. What we have seen up to this point is attacks on organizations, as we've seen in Hamas, in the case of the Palestinian resistance, with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, and things like that. They are not, the strategy they are employed at this point, going after leaders and killing scientists, have repercussions. And the Iranians have proven that they could do that. And they have that strategic that they could do. So the United States interests could be in danger if the United States take a direct involvement in this against the Iranians.
And just to add up to that, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, Colonel Douglas MacGregor actually said Iran recovered from its Pearl Harbor moment quicker than expected. What is your take on this, Dr. Hamoud Salhi?
I think the terminology used in Pearl Harbor is out of reach. Certainly, the Iranians, I don't believe the Iranians were surprised. The Iranians were looking for Israel to go first and attack them. So the narrative as we see it today, Israel is the aggressor. They're the one who went after them. And as they told us in the previous instances, that they will retaliate right away, which they did. So from that perspective, it was not like they were surprised. They were expecting the Israelis to do what they have done it. And when we look at how they reacted, it is clear that they have responded strong, and they did sort of reach their strategic goal. And what worries Israel today is this continuance of attacking deep inside Israel, and that's sort of the cost that will come with it. So at one point or another, these attacks will have an effect in Israel, and there will be sort of a reason for Israel to reconsider its position, or particularly Netanyahu, to find a way of getting out of it.
And what about the Iron Dome that they have always been bragging about? I mean, how could this not work and actually cause such devastation, Dr. Hamoud Salhi?
No, it's been always the case that the Iron Dome cannot intercept everything, 90% of it, and not all the areas are covered. As we've seen, Haifa, for example, for whatever perhaps political reasons and racism or discrimination against the Arabs, the Palestinian populations, they are not covered. The dome is not, as we've seen, is not bulletproof, and but what it gives the Israelis an attitude that they're invisible. And if you start looking at their position since the dome was placed around 2014, that's where the idea came in. The Israel's position on the peace process. Yes, it is coincided with Netanyahu has been in power for a long time, and those who replaced him were not peacemakers. But this idea that we are going to win the war, the struggle against the Palestinians, we are going to, by surrounding us with a big wall, and a dome, give them the idea that they are invisible. Again, and the other thing is that, we've seen today that the entire Israel has a storage or has a as shelters, even in settlements. They have houses or shelters inside the apartments. But how long will that continue? If we've seen what we've seen so far, those shelters will be affected as well. So these are security measures that will not sort of deter the Palestinians or the people in the region from stopping or responding to the Israeli aggression and genocidal activities in Gaza. They created it, and I'm sure what we are going to see after this event, however this ends, with a massive amount of money, new technology will be given to Israel, all with the idea that they are in security danger. And in reality, the myth that we've seen that Israel are safe in Israel is no longer a reality. The Israelis today are more in danger, are not safe. Perhaps the worst place for them is Israel. And that contradicts the whole philosophy why people or the Jews are leaving to Israel. That's another topic. But the idea of established security measures to protect the Israelis is not bulletproof.
Thank you. And speaking of security measures, Dr. Abdenoor Toumi, I mean, did the Zionist entity intelligence fail to anticipate the scale of the response coming from the resistance, whether be it from Hamas or from Iran when it struck it? So is the entity here vulnerable in a way maybe we haven't seen before?
Actually, they are vulnerable, and all those actions, show that. And actually, the operation of Al-Aqsa flood on October 7, 2023, did demystify this myth. And today, this is why the Zionist state intelligence are very active. They are still powerful, but their strength is, again, was demystified by, as I said, first of all, by the operation of Aqsa flood and actually the ongoing carnage that is taking place, and for more than 600 days, and they, with all their quote-unquote intelligence power, they couldn't even find those captives in Gaza. In very tiny and small place, so they couldn't go and find a captive in Gaza. And as far as Iran goes, it's another battle. And the problem here is, again, this goes to the Iranian side, who has showed some weakness on this part, because again, the Iranians, I won't say they didn't, or they underestimate the presence and the role of the Zionist state intelligence actors in the region, and particularly in Iran and other countries in the region. But because of the heterogeneity of the Iranians on one hand, and also the long-standing conflict, because this is not new. This is a very complex situation when it comes to the relations between the Iranians and the colonial state post the fall of the Shah in 1979. So it is a long history and a long fight, particularly on the intelligence field.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hamoud Salhi, yesterday we heard of the news, an MP from Iran saying that they were considering closing the Strait of Hormuz. So will the Strait of Hormuz here be the real flashpoint, perhaps, that will force global powers to act and end this?
I think one way of reading that is that the Iranians are sending signals. They are telling the world, and particularly the United States and Israel, that we have this weapon in our hand and we are for control of the Strait of Hormuz. And we are going to use it if it comes to something that they feel needed. Whether they're going to pursue it or not, it's another strategic tool that they have. They possibly could use it, or they may not possibly could use it. The reason this is an important decision because, number one, you have the vast majority or a large number of oil goes through the strait. Mm-hmm. The other one is also it has strategic military reason. So there are plenty of reasons for strategic benefits for the Israelis to take the action that the Iranians to take the action they should do. And they were basically, I think, my reading out of it is to tell the United States and Israel that we have this tool in our hand.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi, what's your take on this? I mean, if Iran closes the strait, how does that actually reshape oil flows, alliances, also military deployments?
And this is, I mean, will actually create a profound shift in this conflict, and that will impact not only the region, but only the world, and notably the global market and the countries who actually lay on the oil and energy supplies from this region. And this is why, again, we saw like the phone call that was made yesterday between President Donald Trump and his counterpart, Russian President Putin. And this is why they want to not go too far in this war, and at least to hold it in these hours or days. But the impact will be devastating for the entire world. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I mean, we are having this, again, threat that even though has slowed down a bit on Bab el-Mandeb, and the Houthis will react and will show their support to the Iranians, and this will be the nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Let's ask Dr. Hamoud Salhi about maybe the reactions of other countries about this crisis. And here maybe I can mention among a few Egypt, Pakistan, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Could this all indicate a shift in the global order when we see those reactions?
It could be. It's a good reading, and I think the fact that you have the Pakistanis telling the Iranians that we are with you is a huge strategic benefits that the Iranians have on their side. Pakistan could prove to be is a strong ally. It has nuclear facilities, and it's good to know at this time who is supporting Iran, who is supporting them from that perspective. What we are witnessing is the discomfort and the sort of the position against Israel. Some of these statements are really for political reasons, for rhetoric. But what we've seen is a big surprise, and particularly the Israelis. To me, the Pearl Harbor was not the attack, the aggression against the Iranians. The Pearl Harbor was the Iranians' attack on retaliation against the Israelis. The Israelis, for the first time, were faced with the reality that they are vulnerable, and that there are countries there that can stand against them. It changed the shift in the mentality and attitude more than anything else. And I think it all depends how this war is going to end. And more than anything else, we said before, the Iranians have the cards. now to take this where they want to take it. But Netanyahu has a decision to make. He has to come in face of the cost that he is facing. He can't go and having his people in prison under threat, the Israel being destroyed without taking, without sort of having to answer to pressure from interior. This is huge. Closing the country, the airspace, the airports. This is cost that will come to haunt him. So the pressure is on him. This is why I think what he's looking for a major attack, something that perhaps getting the United States to come and say, help me attack the nuclear facilities. And it will be like the big event, as some have reported it. And if he fails, if he wins, it's great. He could take the win and stop. If he fails, it will signals that he has run out of all options. So in many ways, this now is in the hands of Netanyahu to decide whether he can accept the pressure that he's facing. As a point, very, very important to remember, last week, and we mentioned this before, the Israeli Knesset was voted for the first round to get rid of the parliament. It was the first of 3 readings led by the Orthodox Haredist. And there were several opposition, including the former defense minister. But when Netanyahu attacked the Iranian, every member of Israeli Knesset supported him, and you cannot have a word or an opposition inside Israel against him. They see this as a threat against all of them. But the point that I'm trying to make is that will this continue? I don't think it will. If we continue to see this attacks by Iran inside Israel, and we continue to see the effect it is having in terms of destructions, and the economic costs that they will endure. Netanyahu, at one point or another, will have to answer to his countrymen.
Thank you indeed, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. And as we reach the end of this special coverage, let me just give this final question to Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi regarding what Hamoud Salhi was saying. So if there is this big pressure on the Zionist entity and their prime minister, do you think that he would resort to diplomacy, or is it being used maybe as a smokescreen by both sides?
I think he will not take this into consideration. I mean by that, from any pressure from whether the Americans, particularly the Americans, because he doesn't care about the rest, and because nobody pressures him anyway. So, and it is, for him, it's a matter of life or death. And he will take, his main objective is to drag the Americans and to enter them and to clash with the Iranians directly. And this is the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. And again, we have to, it's too early to predict such a scenario, but we have to follow the next coming days and hours and days and see how it will
unfold. Thank you indeed, Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi, and I'm extremely sorry to cut your thoughts there because we reached the end of our special coverage for tonight. Thank you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, as well, for being with us tonight again, and thank you for you, dear viewers, for keeping it here on All 24 News Channel as we conclude the intense edition of tonight's special. The words echo louder than ever. Are we at the edge of regional collapse, or can diplomacy prevail? The coming hours, as Dr. Abdunnoor Toumi said, will answer. Until next time, take care.